The little puppy snuggled up to his little sister. It was very cold in the box, but he didn't know yet that his baby sister didn't care anymore. The puppy didn't know that the man who had torn them from their mother a few hours ago and put them in the box had thrown the babies on the highway in some godforsaken place. The man did not even think about their fate. He had little interest in whether they would be found alive or not. His favorite dog, Alabai, of pure blood, gave birth to these two puppies. She ran away from home a couple of months ago, joined a pack of stray dogs and chased them around the neighborhood, breathing the heady air of freedom until she was caught by her owner. She gave birth to two puppies when they were due. When the puppies were a little older, the owner put them carelessly in a box and took them to the nearest district center, which stretched drearily along the highway. Why he did not drown them at once, but condemned them to a painful death, God only knows. But then some higher forces intervened, giving the little creature a chance for salvation. Michael, the janitor, walked home from the stall, a bottle sticking out of his right pocket. It was cold today, he was freezing to the bone and wanted to warm up as soon as possible. And then a box got in his way. Michael kicked it and a squeak came from it. Wow, what a puppy! Michael twirled the puppy in his hands. I'll give it to my wife. It's her birthday today and she'll need money for a present. They argued for a long time in the smoky kitchen over a bottle of vodka over what to name the puppy. Michael suggested the Banal Cooper or Milo. His wife insisted on the beautiful name Mason. All right, it's your birthday, Michael said. Let it be your way, so the puppy became Mason. But it didn't bring him happiness. His life was not sweet, as if someone was testing him for strength, sending him more and more tests. Michael lived in an old barrack near the highway. This house was inherited from him and stood on the very outskirts of their small backwater town. Therefore, their drunken squabbles with his wife did not disturb anyone. There were no neighbors around. Mason was often punished for puddles when he was a puppy for ruining furniture and shoes, and sometimes Michael would just kick him in the stomach. Because Mason got in his way. The owner didn't like the puppy either and never defended him from her drunken husband. He had grown from a small furry creature into a scruffy teenager and then into a tall but sturdy dog. His fur was an absolutely incredible color, like his mother's alabai, white with some sort of soft pink tint. In the evenings, Mason would look out at the lighted windows of the houses and think he couldn't understand why he was born and lived on this earth if nobody needed him. And he dreamed that he would have his own warm house and a kind master, and he would be his faithful friend. They could go for long walks in the park and then come back from the street and have a warm dinner of porridge with pieces of meat. That's what Mason thought, lying on the cold floor with an empty bowl. When he was tired of his owner's drunken bouts of drinking, he would go to the highway and sit there for a long time, looking at the passing cars. It seemed to him that some car was about to stop and kind hands would take him from here to his home. Home. What a warm and cozy word it is. Suddenly the house became quiet for the young dog. The mistress stopped drinking, and Michael sat alone in the kitchen for a long time with a shot glass. Scandalize him now, there was no one to scandalize, and he got to the bottom of the bottle, went to bed. Mason couldn't understand what was going on at first, but the growing belly of the mistress put everything in its place. For a few months the house was at peace, and it even seemed to Mason that his dreams were coming true. But the dog's happiness didn't last long. One day they brought a baby wrapped in a blanket. The pink lump smelled deliciously of milk. Mason even wanted to lick it. He immediately loved the little man. But why do they need a child? What will they do with him? Anxiety settled in the dog's soul, and soon his fears were justified. The mistress did not cope well with the role of mother. She immediately piled everything on her, feeding by the hour, sleepless nights, and dirty diapers. A baby is not a puppy you can push away and ignore. And after a couple months, she and Michael were back to sitting over a bun in the smoky kitchen. Only now there were two living, unwanted creatures in the house, suffering without a mother's love, and Mason felt sorry for the baby. On long, cold, lonely evenings and nights, he would climb into the crib and warm the baby with his warmth, falling asleep beside it. That night, after a drunken argument, the parents retired to the back room to sleep. They fell asleep, locked themselves in the bedroom, despite the insistent cries of the child wrapped tightly in a blanket. He was hungry, but the mother didn't care. She fell asleep next to the television. Michael slumped in the chair next to her and passed out, an unlit cigarette smoking in his hand. The acrid smoke had already begun to spread across the floor and was slowly filling the master bedroom space. Something was keeping Mason awake and bothering him more and more. The genes he'd inherited from countless generations of stray dogs were pounding in his head. "Run, we have to get out of here now." He got up and went to the door. It was unlocked as always. "I will leave forever and never return to this cursed house and this cursed life." The dog decided for himself once and for all. What about the baby? No, he couldn't leave the baby in this place. It's the only creature on Earth that Mason loved. Then we'll leave together. And then the baby, lying in his crib in his room, moved uneasily and whimpered. The parents, as usual, paid no attention to his cries. Mason pulled the baby out of the crib. With his teeth, he gently picked up the bundle and carried the baby to the door. Carrying his most precious cargo in his teeth, the dog went to the highway. Only there he could find salvation for himself and the baby, at least he thought so. Agatha was on her way back to town from her parents, whom she visited once a month. A couple more settlements and she was home. And there her beloved husband was waiting for her. Suddenly she saw something white on the side of the road in the headlights. She thought she saw something lying on the road. She slowed down and stopped the car. Agatha stared into the darkness and couldn't believe her eyes. There, about 20 meters ahead of her, was indeed a small bundle, and next to it sat a huge dog, shivering with cold and fear. "Jesus," Agatha muttered, and running closer she fell to her knees on the ground. She looked into the bundle. She saw the little wrinkled face of a baby trying to cry. "My God, it's a baby," the girl whispered. "How did it get here?" Though she was not used to such twists of fate. The girl worked in the organs in the Department of Work with minors and saw all sorts of things. She grabbed the child in her arms and rushed to the car. She had to get to the city as soon as possible and help the baby. Agatha had already driven a few hundred meters away when she suddenly remembered about the dog. The dog was wandering slowly along the side of the road toward the city, away from his old life. Suddenly the car with the baby backed up and stopped next to Mason. The door opened and the dog didn't even realize it was an invitation to get into the car. Agatha got out of the car and approached Mason. Kind, warm hands caressed his ear. "Come on, let's hurry up and go home, baby," he heard the dog say. Home? How he longed to hear it. The car sped down the highway faster and faster. Mason pressed his whole body against the sleeping child and fell asleep to the quiet rustling of the wheels. Everything was just as it'd been in his dreams. He dreamed of home, the kind eyes of a girl, her warm hands, sparkling eyes, and a bowl of warm porridge and meat. She and the baby were on their way home, and Agatha thought that she would adopt this foundling. It was not for nothing that she met him on the road. Like the story, put a like and subscribe to the channel. A lot more interesting things to come.